You wake up before dawn. There is no sun yet, only a thick blue mist and the grumble of someone nearby packing animal skins into a makeshift bag. The fire has long since burned down, and the coals are cold. Around you, others are stirring quietly, efficiently, like people who've done this before. You're part of a group of Homo erectus, living somewhere along the East African savanna. Roughly 1.9 million years ago. Today, you will leave. Not just for a hunt or a change of scenery, but for good. Your band has decided to move. Why? It could be the weather, the game population thinning, or perhaps the nearby river dried up. No one knows for sure. Decisions like these aren't made overnight. They're whispered, passed around the fire, decided with subtle nods and shared. Glances over half-chewed antelope meat. What's remarkable is not just that Homo erectus moved. It's how far they moved and how long they kept going, without wheels. Beasts of burden, or even shoes, these early humans trekked out of Africa into territories no hominin had ever seen before. Forests, deserts, mountain passes. Rivers, too. Wide to cross without floating, oceans they could only skirt. But first, the packing. And that didn't take long, because there was very little to bring. A Homo erectus family might own some sharpened rocks, a few flint flakes, animal sinew, and the always important hand axe, one of the first standardized tools in human history. It's sharp, symmetrical, and oddly satisfying to hold. Everyone who's old enough to walk helps carry something. Even small children might clutch a wrapped bundle of dried roots or firewood. The journey begins without fanfare. There are no goodbyes because there is no written language, and probably no concept of farewell as we know it. Still, there's a subtle tension. This is not a short trip. They're walking away from known water holes, from sheltering trees they've slept under many times. Into the unknown. As you move, the landscape opens up. The savanna grasses ripple, like silk in the morning breeze. Your group fans out naturally into a loose line. You walk barefoot, of course. Your feet are wide and calloused, evolved for this exact task, endurance walking over uneven terrain. The group moves steadily, never fast, never hurried, but with purpose. There's no GPS, but navigation isn't blind. The elders remember distant ridges, strange landmarks, old tailies of a cliff shaped like a mammoth's brow. And the sun? It becomes a trusted companion. East and west, shadow and light your brain, even without conscious effort, orients you with surprising accuracy. At mid-morning, someone signals a halt. The children are tired, and the group needs to find water. A scout had peeled off earlier, and now returns, pointing toward a depression in the earth that might still hold moisture. Finding water is an art form. You sniff the air, watch the birds, look for tufts of green among the beige. When you finally locate a muddy stream, it's a relief. Everyone drinks, even if the water tastes like warm leaves and animal droppings. Then comes a meal, a dried haunch of gazelle, roots that have been pounded soft, maybe even some wild figs if you're lucky. Afternoons are quiet. The group moves in silence, conserving energy. The sun beats down, and you watch the horizon blur and shimmer. Insects buzz. Dust rises with every footstep, coating your ankles. You pass signs of life hoof prints in the mud, a pile of broken bones, scratch marks on a tree. Predators are near. You know that. But the group has weapons and numbers. Most threats can be avoided simply by seeing them first. What drives this migration? Food, yes. But perhaps something deeper, a survival instinct that pulses through the generations. You don't have cities, calendars, or history books, but you do have memory. And sometimes memory says, things were better over that ridge. At nightfall, you find shelter, a cliffside or a thicket. There is no tent, no mattress. You sleep on the ground, sometimes curled together for warmth, often with one or two people staying semi-awake, listening for danger. As the stars emerge, the elders begin to murmur. They're naming the constellations, not in words, but in gestures and grunts. These same stars guided earlier migrations. Perhaps they'll guide this one too. You fall asleep to the sound of breathing, the crackle of a newly built fire, and the steady pulse of your own heartbeat, echoing the rhythm of feet that have walked this earth for millennia. But the question lingers, like a flickering shadow on the cave wall. Where exactly are you going, and how do you know when you've arrived? The next morning arrives without warning. No roosters, no clocks, only the lightning of the sky and a few muffled groans from stiff joints on hard earth. You open your eyes and see dew settling on the grass. The world is still, and for a brief moment, there's silence across the land. Then movement begins again. The reshuffling of packs, the cleaning of ash from hands, the soft cough of someone who slept too close to smoke. Your group is already moving by the time the sun clears the horizon. This is not a sprint, but a long, sustained exhale, a journey that could take months, maybe longer. Your legs ache, your stomach is half empty, and yet you go on. This is how Homo erectus conquered continents. It didn't happen all at once. These migrations were not driven by conquests or war or wanderlust. They were the slow erosion of stability. One small family moving a few valleys over, then another and another. Over generations, these footpaths became highways, memory lanes, carved into the landscape, stitched together by the wordless stories of survival. Your group is heading north now. As the land changes beneath your feet, from grassland to more wooded savanna, you start to see new things. Strange trees with wide, shady canopies. Fruit you've never tasted before. Small animals that move differently, sound differently. The elders are cautious. You observe what the animals eat before daring to sample the berries or tubers. Mistakes can be fatal. Some days, you travel through wide-open land where the sky seems impossibly large. Other times, you enter thick scrub where branches scratch your legs and vision narrows to the few feet ahead of you. In places like this, people walk in pairs. No one is left alone. Predators love cover. Food is gathered as you go. Foragers lead this task, scanning the terrain like librarians hunting for lost scrolls. They know hundreds of plants by sight, texture, and taste. Some leaves are boiled to make broths. Others are chewed raw, purely for hydration. Occasionally, the group traps small animals, hares, birds, the occasional lizard, but large prey is rare now. Even though Homo erectus hunted, they weren't reckless about it. Most of the time, they let the land feed them in quieter ways. The spear, by this point in history, is still in its awkward adolescence. A fire-hardened stick, sometimes tipped with stone. Effective if you're close enough and accurate enough. Not always ideal when faced with, say, a giant aurochs. That's why early hominins relied more on planning than brute force. They watched, waited, used cliffs and panic to trap herds. It could take days to set up a successful hunt. As your group moves on, something begins to shift. The nights grow cooler, the air thinner. You're slowly gaining elevation. The mountain range ahead, once a distant smudge on the horizon, now looms in quiet judgment. The decision is made again, without ceremony, that the group will try to cross. This marks a significant moment in human history. Homo erectus wasn't content to stick to one biome. They wandered into forests, climbed plateaus, endured the changing climate, and made homes in places no other primate had dared to stay. The ascent is slow, treacherous. Slippery rock and uneven footing make progress difficult. The children are carried more often now, piggybacked or held at the hip. Everyone moved cautiously. You might wonder, how did they do this without maps? without trail markers? The truth is, they made their own. The land itself became the map. That tree that splits into 3 trunks near the stream? That's a known resting place. The ridge that curves like a tusk? That's where berries grow in midsummer. Memory, shared orally and physically, was the only navigation system docked at the mountain's crest. The view is staggering. A wide valley stretches below, forested, rich in water, teeming, possibly, with new challenges. It could be paradise, or it could be a death trap. No one knows. That's part of the rhythm of migration. Risk woven into every step dot at this point. You may be wondering, was there a leader? A chief who made the call to keep going? Probably not. Early hominin societies were mostly egalitarian, especially during this period. Decisions were made communally, often swayed by experience or wisdom rather than brute strength. The oldest member of the group, perhaps a grandmother with a scarred foot and sharp eyes, might carry more weight than the strongest hunter dot. As your group descends into the valley, you pass evidence of others. Faint paths, charcoal in the soil, a polished stone, too smooth to be natural. Maybe another band passed through recently. Maybe they didn't survive. Either way, this land is new to you. That night, camp is made near a stream. The air is crisp. The stars are brighter at altitude. There's no fear, exactly, but a quiet tension. You've come a long way. You've left behind the known, and what lies ahead is a question mark. Someone tells a story. Not with words exactly, but with gestures, grunts, and simple sounds. A tale about a leopard and a trickster hare. Everyone listens, eyes flickering. In firelight. This is how memory is passed, not just facts, but feelings. The fear of a predator. The thrill of finding food. The safety of sitting close. Your group sleeps as the fire crackles. One ear always open. Always alert. Because out there, somewhere in the dark, is a whole new world, and you are among the first humans to ever see it. But still the question remains. Why did they keep going, even when it might have been easier to stay put? The sun rises again, softer this time, as if the mountains have wrung the heat from it. Your group stretches and groans into wakefulness. The stream beside you murmurs quietly, fed by melting ice far above. There's a moment of stillness, just the sound of insects, wind in the grasses, and the occasional call of something feathered you can't quite name. You are far from home now. Really far. Somewhere behind you lie the savannas of East Africa, the birthplace of your kind. Before that, other hominins had lived and died in these landscapes. But none not Australopithecus, not Homo habilis, had wandered this far with such intention. You are Homo erectus, and your feet have become the vessels of history. By now, the elders estimate it's been several moon cycles since you left, maybe even seasons. No one measures time exactly, but the changes in the air, the stars, and the food all tell their story. And that's one of the greatest tools you possess, adaptation. You've shifted your diet again. The fruits here are smaller. You've started boiling tougher roots in heated stones, or wrapping them in leaves and roasting them in the ashes. Fish are more abundant here, and though you're not fond of getting wet, the sharp-eyed members of the group have started perfecting the art of standing very still beside the shallows. Your tools have changed too. You've picked up new rocks, learned how to shape a more refined edge. Maybe you lost your first-hand axe somewhere along the way and had to replace it. Maybe it broke against a tougher kind of bone. Everything is in flux, and you're still here. This is not the story of conquest. There are no battles, no flags, no ruins. It is a story of persistence, of quiet feet shuffling over ancient soils, of families following memory and instinct with nothing but what they could carry. A story so slow it would seem invisible to any historian trying to write it down centuries later. But the effect? Monumental. Over generations, your descendants will continue this long walk. They will reach the Middle East, India, perhaps even China. Some will cross into Southeast Asia. Others will settle in Java and live among towering volcanoes. Fossils of Homo erectus have been found there, suggesting a journey thousands of kilometers long by foot, mind you, across ever-changing terrain. And here's what's almost too quiet to notice, but deeply important. You are learning to change the land around you. Sure, you don't build houses yet, but you're clearing spaces. You're using fire intentionally now at night to keep predators away, and even perhaps to shape the landscape. A controlled burn to clear thorn bushes, or to coax animals into certain areas. That idea land, as a thing to be managed, starts here, but there's something else happening beneath the surface of this migration. Memory is getting better. Your brains are growing not rapidly, not overnight, but enough to notice a shift in how stories are passed on, how tools are improved, how social bonds become the glue that keeps your people alive. Your group comes across the bones of a small mammal today, cracked and cleaned, arranged oddly near a stone outcropping. Was it another group? A shrine? A failed hunt? You don't know. But you stop. You look. You remember Dot. Maybe that's the earliest kind of ritual, pausing, noticing, reflecting. A kind of quiet reverence for what came before. One night, as the group huddles together beneath a ledge to stay dry from a passing storm, a young member asks again, not with clear words, but with repeated sounds and pointing gestures. Why? You can't go back. The elders are quiet, because back doesn't exist anymore. The place you left is already changed. Your footprints are being erased by time and rain. The animals have moved on. The rivers shifted. The roots you once dug up are already rotting beneath new layers of soil. There's only forward. You don't know it, but your group is laying the groundwork for what will one day be called humanity's first great dispersal. Later species Homo sapiens, for instance, will finish the job, spreading across continents and oceans. But you are the first. The ones who proved it could be done. No one will write about you for 2 million years. And even then, they'll mostly look at your bones, your tools, your fire pits. They won't know how you argued over where to set up camp, how you soothed a frightened child during a thunderstorm, how you chewed leaves for an elder with sore teeth, how someone slipped and twisted their ankle, and you waited patiently while they healed. But those small, boring moments are the real legacy. The steps in between the steps. And here you are, looking at a new horizon. Another valley. Another stretch of land waiting to be walked. The migration never really ends, because the idea of home is still forming. Right now, home is wherever the fire is warm, and the group is whole. As you shoulder your tools and move forward. You have no idea what lies ahead. Mountains, forests, new predators, new plants, new knowledge. But one thought lingers, simple, quiet, and powerful. What if walking wasn't just survival, but the beginning of everything else? You sit with your back against the stone wall, warmth radiating toward you from the fire's dull orange glow. Sparks drift upward lazily, casting shifting shadows on the low ceiling of the cave. The smell is familiar wood smoke, scorched meat, damp fur, and something slightly sour, like sweat soaked into mammoth hide. You're a Neanderthal. You don't know what that means, because words like species, evolution, or archaic human won't exist for another 40,000 years. What you do know is that night is here. The cold is creeping in, and the evening chores must begin. Yes, dash chores. Because even in a Paleolithic cave, there's work to be done after the sun disappears behind the tree line. Contrary to modern imagination, your life is not one endless action scene involving spears and saber-tooths. In fact, Most of your time is spent doing, well, this. Sitting near the fire, working slowly and methodically, thinking about stones. There's a piece of flint in your hand, dull and lumpy. You've been staring at it for nearly 20 minutes. Now, turning it over, running your thick fingers along the edges, waiting to see what it wants to become. This is one of the main evening activities in your camp. Once the meat is cooked and the skins are hung to dry, your people sit around the fire with various pieces of stone, wood, and sinew shaping, repairing, preparing for tomorrow. You glance over at your clanmate. She's grinding ochre with a smooth pebble, working it into a fine powder. She'll use it to decorate something later, or maybe just smear it on her arms. She does that sometimes. No one's sure why another person is sharpening a scraper. The rhythmic tapping of stone on stone is oddly soothing. Tap, flip, tap, test the edge. Tap. It's the same sound you've heard since you were small. Your people have passed this sound down through generations, like a lullaby made. Of rocks dot outside the cave. It's snowing again, lightly, silently. You can hear the wind rustle the pines, but in here, the walls keep most of it at bay. Still, you pull your reindeer hide wrap tighter. The cold always finds a way to creep in eventually. There are no beds, just the softest corner of the cave, lined with furs. You and your people will sleep curled together, like a pile of logs, bodies pressed close for warmth. Someone always wakes at odd hours, tending the fire, feeding a child, muttering in dreams. Sleep is more a shared rhythm than a personal experience. Back at the fire, you finally decide what your flint chunk will be. Not a spearhead, no. It's too thick for that. But it could make a serviceable chopping tool, something for cracking open marrow bones or slicing hide. You begin tapping it with another stone, coaxing it into shape. The flakes scatter on the ground like brittle flower petals. There's an art to this flint napping. You were shown how to do it by someone who never explained in words. They showed. You threw hands, through example. You watched. You copied. You ruined dozens of stones before you got one right. But eventually, the muscle memory took over. Now your hands know more than your brain does. Neanderthals didn't leave many carvings or dramatic cave murals, but they left tools, thousands of them, buried in layers of soil, scattered in ancient shelters. Axes, scrapers, blades, the archaeologists who dig them up now might call them simple, but you know better. Each one is the result of thought, intention, and time. Some tools are specific to tasks. Bone awls for poking holes in hide. Notched blades for cutting sinew. Sometimes, tool has no clear purpose at all, just a groove worn smooth by years of turning in someone's hand, like a comfort object. Not why so many stones. Because your world is built on them. Stones butcher your food, scrape your hides, defend you from threats. Occasionally, they're heated in the fire and dropped into water-filled stomach linings to cook soup. A good stone is a quiet lifeline. You keep working your flint until the edge feels right. You nick your thumb slightly. You don't flinch. The blood smears across the stone. You rub it away and keep going. Someone passes a piece of dried meat to you, tough, smoky, and slightly gamey. You chew slowly. It helps warm your jaw. Around the fire, the group is mostly silent. Communication happens in glances, in hums, in raised eyebrows, and small grunts of approval. There's a rhythm to it, like a shared language made of breath and patience. A child leans too close to the fire. Someone gently pulls him back without scolding. Another person laughs softly, and it spreads just a chuckle, but enough to ease. The weight of the evening dot above you. The smoke from the fire curls into a dark hollow near the cave ceiling. Bats hang upside down there. They shift occasionally, but never bother you. There is no clock, but eventually you feel the signal. It's time. Tools are set aside. The fire is banked. Hides are pulled into a sleeping heap. You lie down next to your cousin, your shoulder brushing hers, and close your eyes. No pillow. No silence. Just the sound of breathing, the crackle of embers, the shift of wind through stone as you drift off. The flint you shaped earlier still sits near the fire, warm to the touch, and you wonder not in words, but in some pre-linguistic murmur. How many times will we sit here, shaping stones, before something finally changes? The flint in your hand is nearly finished now. Its edges are sharp, flaked just right. You've ground the handle area smoother to keep from blistering your palm, and tested the balance with a few careful swings in the air. It's a good tool, nothing fancy, but it feels solid, familiar. You set it down on a flat rock beside your place near the fire. That's where your tools always go. Outside, the clouds are thick and gray. Snow is falling again, but only lightly. The flakes drift and swirl, gathering on the dark branches of pine trees just beyond the cave. You've seen this kind of snow before. It means another cold night, but nothing too serious, not yet. Around you, the others settle in for the evening. Routine. It's almost identical to yesterday's. Warm the cave, scrape hides, stir boiling broth, check the sharpness of tools, tend the fire. The rhythm is slow, repetitive, and comforting. Your cousin is pulling sinew strips into thread again. Her fingers are red and raw, but she doesn't complain. Beside her, someone is trying to drill a hole through a bone using a pointed flake and twisting pressure. The bone might become a bead or part of a necklace. Not for decoration only. Sometimes the bones make noise when strung, or mark a person as a member of a particular kin group. Identity in this world comes quietly. Farther back in the cave, the elder is rearranging the tool cache. There's a clear system. Flakes sorted by size, cores stacked neatly, broken points set aside for reuse. You've seen them do this every few days, not because the pile gets messy, but because they want it right. The process is thoughtful, deliberate. This, too, is a kind of language. One of placement, pattern, and attention. Neanderthals may not have left many cave paintings behind, but they left arrangements. Circles of stones, piles of bones. Flint flakes grouped in ways that don't make immediate practical sense. Archaeologists puzzle over these now. Were they spiritual? Symbolic? Did they mark time or territory? Maybe, or maybe they were just human. Tonight, your thoughts wander again, not in words, but in feelings, fragments, images. You think about the hand axe your grandfather once made. No one uses it now, but no one throws it away either. It sits near the rear wall of the cave, in a place where it won't be stepped on. A relic, but not forgotten. You wonder if your own tools will one day end up the same, set aside, observed, and remembered. Not by you, but by others. And the thought surprises you. It's not unpleasant. You turn your attention back to the fire. It's burning low, which is just how you want it. The goal isn't light, but heat. You stir the embers with a stick and add a few dry branches. The flames rise just enough to warm the stones. Your neighbor gestures for a bone pin, and you hand it over without needing to speak. You've worked beside each other for years. You can anticipate needs before they're expressed. That's how survival works here. Not with shouting or orders, but with quiet coordination. Still, the occasional grunt or sigh breaks the silence. Neanderthals likely had a form of speech rougher than ours. Perhaps, but real. Not just pointing and grunting, but tonal shifts. Proto-words, shared sounds. The evidence is subtle. Bones in the throat, the structure of the skull, where patterns on teeth suggesting vocal breathing. And of course, the complexity of the life you live. Because this life requires communication, Imagine shaping a tool without showing someone else how to do it, or coordinating a hunt without indicating direction, or preparing an herbal treatment without identifying the correct plant. Without language, however basic your world would collapse. And maybe, in these slow, flint-filled nights, language was born. Around the fire, among shared tasks, between long pauses and sharper strikes. Of stone, maybe it wasn't shouted or sung into being. Maybe it was chipped out, flake by flake, as part of the long conversation that was living together. Your people don't know they're fading. Not yet. In a few thousand years, the climate will shift. Ice will spread farther. Game will become scarce. Another group, anatomically modern humans, will arrive with new tools, new ways of organizing themselves, and perhaps more efficient strategies. Your groups will mix for a while, trade, even bear children together. But in time, you'll vanish, not from memory, but from presence. But here's the thing. Your tools will remain, buried in cave floors, wedged beneath boulders, frozen in ice. And tens of thousands of years later, people will find them, hold them in gloved hands, turn them over beneath artificial lights. They'll whisper about the person who made this edge, who struck this flake, who left this fire-blackened stone in the corner of a quiet cave. They'll name you Neanderthal. They'll argue whether you are smart or slow, tender or brutal, fully human or something almost but not quite. But none of that matters to you now. You're here, in the warm circle of light, working beside your people, shaping tools from stone and stories from silence. You don't need to explain who you are. You're alive, and that's enough. As the fire settles into coals and you curl up under your hide, you glance once more at the tools by your feet. Flint, bone, memory. And you wonder, just before your eyes close, is this what it means to be remembered not by name, but by the mark you left in stone? Morning returns, as it always does, not with alarm bells or roosters, but with cold light crawling down the walls of the cave. The embers are still glowing faintly, and the air smells of smoke, wet stone, and fur. One person has already risen and is stoking the fire. Their silhouette shifts quietly as they add more wood, nudging life back into the coals. You're sore. That's normal. A night on packed earth and animal hide doesn't do wonders for the spine. But your body is built for this. You stretch slowly and pull the hide tighter over your shoulders. There's work to be done today, but no bosses, no schedules. The work flows with the season, with the needs of the group, and with the quiet ticking of the Neanderthal mind. Fix, prepare, repeat. You reach for your flint blade, the one you shaped last night. It's still there, and it's solid, heavy in the hand, with a good edge. Today it will be used for something mundane but essential, processing sinew. The tendons of large animals are strong, flexible, and absurdly useful. With the right treatment, they become thread, rope, bindings, even bowstrings in the future. But preparing sinew is slow, sticky work. You sit by the mouth of the cave and begin peeling long, pale strands from a hunk of dried leg tendon. You scrape, you roll, you stretch. The sound is soft and stringy, like someone peeling damp bark. This is where the boring part of history lives. Not in battles or epic discoveries, but in the repetition of small tasks, the kind that keep a group alive. And make no mistake, Neanderthals were specialists in boring survival. You look around the cave. Tools are everywhere. Some in baskets woven from twigs and reeds. Others left neatly near certain individuals. Your group has its own preferences, its own tiny habits. That person likes using obsidian. That person prefers limestone, even though it dulls faster. These are not idle choices. They reflect lived knowledge. Outside the cave, two members of your group are repairing a spear. It broke during the last hunt. They're arguing softly about how much of the shaft needs to be replaced. One gestures, the other grunts. Eventually, they settle on reinforcing it with extra sinew and a layer of sticky pine resin, hardened over the fire. That glue, by the way, takes hours to make. You have to heat the tree resin slowly, mix it with powdered charcoal, stir it with a stick until it forms a thick black tar. Then you apply it while it's still warm, careful not to burn your fingers, and let it harden into a permanent waterproof bond. All that for one spear, and that spear might last a few hunts before it has to be redone. You don't make these tools for fun. You make them because the margin between success and disaster in your world is razor thin. There are no stores, no replacements, no backups. Just stone, bone, and time. Later that day, someone brings in a dead hare. It's not much, certainly not a feast, but it's fresh. You help skin it using a flake tool, small and sharp like a prehistoric X-Acto knife. You start at the ankle, slicing the skin upward, careful not to puncture the belly. The organs are warm. You know which parts to eat now, which to save for later, and which to leave for the birds outside. The bones? They go in the toolkit pile. Nothing is wasted. Bone tools, especially from larger animals, are an entire category of Neanderthal technology often overlooked. You use them to scrape hides, to pierce soft material, to shape wood. They last longer than flint in some cases, and they're more flexible, but they're also harder to produce. Shaping bone takes patience, and patience is your greatest tool. Of all, midday is quiet. Most people rest. A few nap in patches of sunlight near the cave mouth. Others pick lice from each other's hair. Another deeply practical and deeply boring activity. Hygiene isn't glamorous, but it matters. You wander outside briefly. The snow has stopped, and the trees shimmer with moisture. You check the traps set the day before. No luck today. You return with a few sticks for kindling and a half-frozen mushroom that might be edible. You'll ask the elder who remembers plants. Back at the fire, someone is boiling water in a hollowed-out animal skull. It's not ideal. It leaks a little, but it works. They drop in herbs and bark, making a kind of tea. It's bitter, but it eases sore throats and helps with stomach pain. You know this not because someone taught you in a school, but because someone else once got sick, drank it, and felt better. You remembered that everything you do is part of a long, unspoken experiment. You notice that your stone blade has dulled already. You sigh and reach for a new piece of flint. Back to shaping. Tap, flip, tap. This time, the stone cracks wrong, leaving a jagged fault line. You set it aside. Try again. These are the forgotten hours of prehistory. The hours archaeologists gloss over. The hours Hollywood never films. But they are where the real story happens, because within these tasks lies something deeper. Identity. The kind of blade you make, the way you shape a hide, the patterns you paint on your tools. They tell others who you are, where you're from, what your group values. You begin to understand. The tools are not just for survival. They are communication. Some flint tools have tiny notches, decorative, perhaps. Others are symmetrical beyond what's necessary for function. Why? Maybe because humans, even Neanderthals, like things to be just so. Maybe the shaping of stone is as much an emotional act as a practical one. And when you think about it, it makes sense. After all, you've been sitting here for hours, doing nothing but staring at rocks. But maybe that's exactly what makes you human. Still, as you blow the dust from your latest flake and squint at the edge.